Good Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast brought to you by Blue Water Climate Control. Glad to have you along with us on the podcast today. Check out Blue Water Climate Control online on Twitter at BlueH2O_climate, or you can check them out on their webpage at BlueWaterClimateControl.com. With Austin Price and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Tennessee trying to lick their wounds from the Georgia loss and turn and set their sights on Kentucky in a game at home that you feel like Tennessee absolutely has to win. Guys, we'll put a final bow tie on Georgia after hearing Jeremy Pruitt on Monday, Rob, and after seeing the game and rewatching the game. What's your kind of final takeaway from Tennessee's second half collapse, fourth quarter collapse, if you will, third quarter collapse against the Dogs?
My biggest takeaway was he had his quarterbacks back, probably. My second biggest one would probably be that he saw a lot. I mean, he focused a lot more on the mistakes, on the lack of execution. Whereas to me, just how much, and I don't dispute that. I mean, Tennessee would have, I think, could have gotten that game into the fourth quarter had they not had 10 penalties, had they not had 3 turnovers. But man, Georgia was a lot better physically than Tennessee was, more so than I anticipated going into that.
My final takeaway is the fact that I thought the defense performed pretty well. I mean, yeah, they had a couple of moments, but they didn't tackle great. But I mean, as Rob just alluded to, they're, a couple of short fields and, the defensive touchdown from being right there in the fourth quarter, even with an offense that, only crossed midfield on its own, not counting the end of the game where Georgia was just letting them run out the clock one time. And, had Tennessee punted on first down, during all that turnover barrage, what would the score of the game ended up being? I mean, it would have been like, a 1-score game. It's one of those things where Tennessee defensively, I thought, showed they had a little something. They're not to Georgia's level as far as pure talent on defense, but I thought schematically and stuff, they had a good game plan. And Jeremy pointed out on Monday, it's like Georgia gave us the call. We were able to put in our perfect call, and we still messed it up.
Yeah, that's a Jeremy Pruitt staple. They haven't made a lot of bad defensive calls. They haven't executed some of those defensive calls, but they haven't made many bad defensive calls. But I do think that they had a good game plan, and I thought that he was in Kirby, and Monken's kind of ears and headset to know exactly what was coming there for about a quarter and a half. They were really pretty good there. And, I will credit this defense and say this about this defense. They've been put in 3 really rough situations this year. When you go back to the botched punt against South Carolina,
yep,
they didn't give up any points in that one. And then they were put in 2 bad situations in the third quarter to start the second half against Georgia and got 2 3-and-outs and gave up 2 field goals. The defense's ability to handle adversity when bad things have kind of happened their way has been pretty impressive to me. I mean, I think that jumps out immediately about kind of where the mentality of the defense is. I think the offense has to develop that mentality. But I like, Rob, what the defense has been able to do when they've been put in really bad situations.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers don't look great at Georgia, but I think, they just wore out. Like at one point in the second half, when Tennessee
possession was a murder.
It was Tennessee's last little meaningless drive made the numbers look a little better. But at one point, I guess it was towards the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth, Georgia had run 69 offensive plays to 42 for Tennessee. I mean, that's not sustainable. And I think that's when they kind of unraveled a little bit. But if I'm Pruitt, I'm encouraged by what I saw from the defense for the most part. I mean, they gave Georgia the 95-yard touchdown drive with 2 pass interference calls. And one of them, as Jeremy pointed out today, if Alante doesn't tackle the guy, if he doesn't let him get behind him, it's 3rd and 9 from around Georgia's 20. I mean, that really changes the complexion of things. So again, the final numbers don't paint the whole picture. I thought the defense certainly played well enough to win in that game.
All right, so offensively, obviously a meltdown in the third quarter after having really not doing anything in the first half other than the 2 plays. Now, the 2 plays count, no question about that. But if you're Jim Chaney and you're Jeremy Pruitt in conversation with Jim Chaney, what's the move? What do you got to do on offense? What do you got to have to get the offense back on track? Obviously, they were pretty successful against Missouri. who played much better against LSU than I anticipated. And obviously LSU's got a lot of problems. We'll hit on the SEC a little bit later in the podcast here, but what's the fix, if you will, from the Georgia game heading into the Kentucky game offensively?
Well,
What do
I
you
think
guys want to see more of?
they've got to get healthier on the offensive line. You know, Wanye, basically missed all of Thursday's practice with neck spasms. They weren't sure he was going to even be able to go. He was able to play. Obviously, Brandon Kennedy's a little bit banged up and didn't play great Saturday. Jerome Carvin's got turf toe. Riley Locklear's out with a labrum. Still trying to get through it, but he's, more just kind of, spot situational type stuff than he has being able to a guy that can come in and play right away. K'Ron is somehow so far down the depth chart that he can't even get on the field when they are, mutilated by, nicks, cuts, and bruises. So,
which surprises me. He played well at the end of last year, I thought.
Yeah, but somehow he's nowhere near being able to play this year. So, Tennessee's got to get better on the offensive line and allow them to be able to, I think not all of it, because, everybody deserves their fair share of criticism from Saturday. But, I'm not sure how creative they could be when they weren't sure who was going to be starting where on the offensive line.
And I know, I second everything you said about the OL. I'll move on to one of Brent's favorite subjects is the receivers getting off the line. You had Josh Palmer, who I think is looking like a pro more and more every week, had 4 catches for 71 yards. The rest of the wideouts combined had, I think it's 8 for 57 or 7 for 57. So, they averaged about 8 yards of reception while Palmer's pushing 20. And I don't know if the freshman can do any better, but it's time to find out.
Can't do any worse.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Agreed.
Yeah, I'm with you, Rob. I think that and again, I know those guys missed 2 weeks in fall camp, and some of them missed more than 2 weeks in fall camp with contact tracing and all those things else. But one of the things that we talked about in the preseason, Austin, was that Jim Chaney can kind of spoon feed the offense to them, get a little package for them, get them a few plays here and there. It's time to do that with Malachi Wideman. It's time to do that with Jimmy Holiday, and it's time to do that with Jimmy Callaway. Maybe they can't come out there and make all the route adjustments, but you can give them a half dozen plays a game where maybe they don't run but 1 or 2 different routes. They just run it out of a different formation. But you can do that and see what you got there.
I think you've got to find a way to get those guys sprinkled in. They don't need to be the focal point of the receiver room. They're not ready yet. But can you sprinkle them in where you don't have Jacob Warren flexed out, a big tight end? Jacob, the kid, he moves well, but he don't move that well. Obviously, Brandon, Johnson is limited as far as speed. Cedric Tillman's not a burner. You've got to find ways to sprinkle them in. You can't get caught out there with Warren, Tillman, Jennings, and Palmer on the field at one time.
Well, I think that you have. I do think this, for all the criticism that Jim Chaney has gotten, and I don't think Jim had a very good day. I do think the incorporation of these 2 tailbacks into the passing game is a good move, because I don't think either one of these 2 tailbacks are lining up, give it to them 20 times a game between the tackles, and go play run game football. So I do think that there was some positives there, but those receivers have to play better. They've got to get off the line of scrimmage better, no question about that. And Rob, I think the other thing that you have to do too is those guys got to pass protect better. I thought the tight ends, the tight end pass protection and the running back pass protection and blitz pickup stuff was not very good. I thought they got bowled over multiple times.
PFF agrees with you. We'll put the numbers up on the board later this afternoon, but Eric Gray and Ty Chandler were both in the 30s, which is, as low as I've ever seen. Cade was in the 30s. Trey was the only offensive line. Trey graded out at 60, which is barely passing, and he was the highest offensive lineman by a pretty wide margin. But you're spot on, or at least for the PFF numbers with Chandler and Gray, they got just ravaged in their grades.
I'm going to go out there. There was a thread on the board on Monday evening about, one of the biggest problems is Tennessee doesn't have a real running back, and I can't really disagree with that. I mean, like, Ty Chandler's fine and Eric Gray's fine, but those guys are, to me, like situational type players, or toys, as Tennessee would call it if you looked at the recruiting.
If you're talking about them as NFL prospects, they're specialists. They're
I mean,
third
like,
down specialist type guys.
yes, no doubt. And so, like, can you give it to them? Yeah, that you could give it to them 20 times in a game, but like, I don't think you can do that the entire season. I think Tennessee's going to have to find somebody that can help them with bigger, with more experienced defensive lines, just to lean on them. And if that's T. Hodge, it's T. Hodge. If that's D. Beckwith, it's D. Beckwith. Somebody, because I think right now, Tennessee's just not super dynamic there. And what I mean by that is Eric Gray's a dynamic player out in space, but space in Brent in this league trying to run between the tackles, I mean, like, a sliver, some people got to be able to make a sliver work. And Saturday they didn't have anything.
Well, I think both those guys have been arm tackled by linebackers too much. Okay. I mean, in this league, if you can get the running back to the linebacker level, okay, to the second level, I'm not saying the guy makes it, the running back always makes the linebacker miss. It's not realistic, but that running back's got to be falling forward and not getting knocked backwards at the linebacker level. And I think that's an area where Tennessee's running game lacks a little bit right now, because I just don't think those guys can break a ton of tackles. Now, can they, in an open space, can they make a guy miss? Yeah, I think Eric Gray has shown that he can, but I don't know if they're going to run through many arm tackles at the running back position against linebackers as a bigger back would. So maybe that is T. Hodge, or maybe that is D. Beckwith. We'll see what they elect to do there. I think who the third back is and how they incorporate one is an interesting story moving forward. I think another interesting story also is what defensively, what do they do at the star position? Was that just rush from Sean Schamberger from being back from game one and that's it? Or is Jeremy Pruitt, still open to some other things there? I don't think he was elated at all with Schamberger's play, in his first game back against Georgia. I think he made several busts and did some things wrong. Now, everybody did, so I'm not picking on him. But, they played Slaughter there. Then they went Theo Jackson there. Now Schamberger there. Is it all Schamberger play through it, or do they start messing around and looking at some other guys at the star position?
Well, before we go any further, I do want to clarify. It's not like I'm saying Eric Gray and Ty Chandler are bad players. I just think that they're never going to be consistent. Like, Eric Gray may have 175 yards one game, and then he may have 30 the next. Like that I just think that from it being a consistent 90 to 120 yards a week, every week, I don't think that's those two players. Anyways, so to your point, I think Tennessee's going to experiment at star. Kentucky don't throw it a whole lot. So, like, you have a little bit of you have kind of almost a week off when it comes to, having a ton of pressure on your star. So maybe they give Danico Slaughter more look. I could see them moving Bryce inside and playing Kenneth George and Alante, but Alante just didn't play very well last week either. So, I mean, I could see them going away from that. So I'll be surprised if it's Schamberger on Saturday. The staff was none too happy with him when they left Athens, Georgia. Several of the buses in the middle of the field were on number 12. And, it's not like he's not been, healthy. I mean, he missed because of, off the field type things. It wasn't like he had a hamstring and he was recovering from that. He's been healthy and ready to play. He just wasn't able to play the first 2 weeks. So, I think that's a problem if he's already busting in his first game action of the year. Any
chance Keyshawn, not at star, but just that he plays and gives Jeremy some flexibility with somebody else?
I mean, I think it's possible, but I don't think so. I mean, I think more likely it's Danico at star, and then I think they'll go with Kenneth George and Bryce at corners. With Alante being the third.
Well, this game may set up pretty decent for Alante because you have to tackle on the corner. He's pretty good in run coverage, run support coming off the corner, that type thing, because they don't stretch the field with you as much as some other teams do.
Yeah.
I think that's the best thing Alante's done is I think he's been pretty good in run support. He's just, kind of fallen asleep some in some coverage situations that, need to be better and that he's
Well,
got
he's
to
so
improve.
good in that area, Brent, that you go back to a year ago, BYU, he gets caught looking in the backfield, lets the guy get behind him on the big play. Same thing the other night on the pass interference penalty. He gets caught looking in the backfield because he is so good in run support and he enjoys it, I believe, the contact that, George Pickens gets behind him and then they throw up the wounded duck and then Pickens gets the Rick Steiner clothesline from Alante. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's certainly got to play better in pass coverage. All right, let's talk about Kentucky a little bit. You mentioned they don't throw it, Rob. It's that Eddie Gran strange offense from the standpoint of, they still haven't been able to find a quarterback who can really do anything or stretch the field, yet they keep finding a way to be effective offensively in the way that they sort of run this single wing offense.
That's exactly the term I was going to use to describe it.
Which is kind of crazy, but why do you think that works? I mean, look, I'm not saying they're winning the division or anything like that, but why do you think that Eddie Gran's been able to find something? Is it just because it's so different than everybody else?
I mean, I'd give them credit. They obviously coach it up and practice the heck out of it. And I'll equate it with Navy or something. They don't. They're not going to win 10 games doing that, but if they're just playing average competition, I mean, they can get it done without having a passing game. Getting it done in the SEC though is a whole nother level. And you have to give Coach Gran a tip of the cap, but I just don't. They don't have a Lynn Bowden type athlete that can just turn a 3-yard run into an explosive chunk play. I think Tennessee can handle their offense. I think if you don't have a dual threat guy or a legit pro style quarterback that can spin it, I think Jeremy is really good at kind of limiting what you're going to be able to do.
Austin, this is going to be on Tennessee's defensive ends to make sure that they don't let guys leak out and contain on the zone read and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's the challenge for, Morvin Joseph, who showed up in this game, Tyler Barron, still the challenge for DeAndre Johnson, who will be back after his dumb headbutt. I'll just call it what it is, dumb headbutt play that cost him, 3/4 of that football.
Give Roman Harrison some props now. He showed up finally.
Yep, he did. The question is, can they play with the discipline they need to on the edge to not give up, big plays in the zone read, right, Austin?
No, there's no doubt. I mean, Kentucky's not dynamic with the football in their hands. You guys just highlighted what they like to do. They do it, they do it very well. But at the same time, if you can get up on Kentucky and establish yourself early, they don't necessarily have the offense that's going to come roaring back, which is what Tennessee did 2 years ago when Kentucky rolled in here and had such a good team. Tennessee was able to get out and was able to shut them down early and get out offensively. And of course, Jarrett threw the Hail Mary there right there before the half, and I don't think Kentucky ever recovered from it. So, Tennessee, I think, has got to get out of the blocks offensively and defensively. They have to tackle well. They have to play discipline football and assignment football. If they don't play assignment football, Kentucky's going to have some plays.
I didn't see any of the Kentucky Mississippi State game, but obviously State was awful if they threw 6 interceptions. Not saying Kentucky doesn't have, secondary guys, but if you throw 6 interceptions in a game, you're just playing really bad football because it's the same Kentucky secondary that had a hard time with Ole Miss. Now I understand everybody's having a hard time with Ole Miss and what they're doing offensively right now, but I mean, this is, I think that's more of an anomaly than saying, that's the no-fly zone in the secondary with Kentucky's defensive backs.
Yeah, and that reminds me, not next week's podcast, but the one after. I'm going to be in the Caribbean because I sold my Mike Leach stock the Monday after the LSU game. So the open date, I'm gonna bounce out.
You might be able to retire at that point because I mean that guy went from the coaching Hall of Fame to the Hall of Shame faster than anybody we've ever seen.
We shorted Mike Leach the Monday after the LSU game.
We certainly did. All right,
Kentucky had 173 yards of total offense.
And controlled it, and we're in control the whole night because Mississippi State could not do anything offensively. All right, as we put a bow tie on this podcast, we got to hit a little bit of the SEC and what was just an absolute wild, crazy day. I mean, Ole Miss can't stop anybody, as we know. But I mean, are they going to put 600 yards up against everybody they play, Rob?
Lane should have onside kicked it every time. I mean, if he steals one possession in that game, they might win.
You're probably right, especially once it was kind of a back and forth type deal.
Yeah.
Like, why not? I mean,
unless you were hoping Alabama has a bad snap or botches a handoff.
How about Lane not bringing his team out for pregame warm-ups? That's the most Lane thing ever, isn't it?
No, I think it's neat. It's a very Benny Hammonds, the former head coach at Gatlinburg Pittman. He did that for years.
You're not going to see Lane and Benny Hammonds compared very often.
He would, yeah, correct. He would warm up off-site. We had them on Rivalry Thursday one year. That he warmed up off-site. Literally, the bus rolled in. We did all this live in the open. They walked off the bus, ran through the banner, and Ron Durbin had a diving catch down the far sideline about 30 seconds in, that got him down inside the 5. He used to do that all the time. So, I think it's kind of it is kind of a, get in your head type of move by Lane Kiffin, but why not? I mean, again, Lane's playing with house money, especially this year, but more so specifically when he's playing Alabama.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, with where they're at right now, I mean that they nobody expected anything out of them. All right, I've said this on the 10 things I think I had it in Friday's deal. Barry Odom was the best coordinator hire made in the offseason. Okay, now Jeff Lebby
you think
at
better
Ole
than Bo
Miss.
Pelini?
Jeff Lebby's pretty good at Ole Miss. Here's my question: Bo Pelini, Chad Morris. Who's been? I mean, I guess Pelini's been the bigger dud to this point, but Chad Morris and Auburn's offense not been exactly award-winning either.
No, Pelini is at the bottom, and it's not close. I'm surprised he's got a job this week. I mean, I wouldn't have put it past Eddie Oda.
Well, they play Florida this week, a Florida offense that can score. So I'll be shocked if he's the defense coordinator next week.
50.5. That's the over/under in Florida's points. What do you got, AP?
I would probably have to take under. I think they'll score 50.
They just gave up 45 to a Missouri team that came in here and scored one touchdown.
Yeah, I mean that's the craziest thing that I saw all weekend was the fact.
Are they packing it out at the Swamp?
No. I don't think so. I think I saw where the chancellor came out and said they were going to stay status quo.
Do you think the chancellor would choke Mullen though after he said all that?
I'm sure. But Hubbard, I was more surprised by Ole Miss rolling up 600 than I was Missouri. I mean, both are equally crazy, but seeing Alabama and Nick Saban give up 600 yards of total offense was just.
Because I thought Kiffin would have a couple things early and would make a couple plays early, and then that would be the end of it. Never dreamed that they would do it all night long and have a chance to win that football game.
Well, now they think Georgia, I think feels like they're very much capable of going in Tuscaloosa and winning now. Because they think that Stetson Bennett and the offense can move the ball and score, and their defense won't allow the Alabama offense to have that much success.
Man, I've been really impressed with Mac Jones. I didn't see that he's played well. I didn't see him being capable of that.
No, not from what we saw out of him a year ago after Tua got hurt in that Tennessee game.
He was pretty good though there at the bowl game and Auburn.
He was.
I mean, he was throwing some dimes Saturday night, man. I mean, he was, and they still have. I mean, they lost a couple of future Pro Bowlers last year, but they still got some skill at wideout.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing Georgia offensively have the creativity that Kiffin had for them to put up a bunch of points against Alabama. I think this one's going to be much more in Nick Saban's comfort zone, Rob, when you talk about style of play. I mean, Georgia may go a little bit fast or try to go a little bit fast, but not like the Ole Miss speed.
I don't see Kirby signing off on a game plan like Kiffin had.
No, and I don't see. They don't have the mobile. I mean, Stetson Bennett's got some athletic ability, but he can't do what Matt Corral and what they're doing in the run game. I don't think again that with.
Do you think Nick and them will steal signals again?
Still signals, absolutely. It's always something. Hey, as we wrap it up, let's say this: how bad does the league look with what happened in the Arkansas?
Oh my God!
And
I mean,
how bad was that explanation that they put out on Monday?
it was terrible.
You're better off just to say the officials screwed up. We apologize. It is what it is.
I mean, just absolutely bizarre. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I've seen a lot of football. I know you have too, but the backwards spike
and
lateral.
And they acknowledged that, but then it basically said it took Arkansas too long to recover it, to call it a clean recovery.
Well, I thought they said that because the whistles blew, some of the players quit.
So it wasn't an immediate recovery or
It was
whatever.
a clear recovery, but not an immediate clear recovery.
Whatever that means.
Talking about splitting hairs.
Yeah, they just totally botched that one, which is unfortunate for Sam Pittman and his staff, who have done a really nice job over there. I mean,
I was getting ready to say
they're pretty.
He's done a better job than Sam Pittman, maybe Lane Kiffin. I mean, two rookie coaches that have come in and really gotten off to nice starts.
Yeah, they certainly have. But for Tennessee fans and for Vol fans, it's about what the Vols can do against Kentucky coming up on Saturday. We will break down that game throughout the remainder of the week with all of our regular coverage. Rob will have the matchup piece coming up on Thursday. We'll have the War Room. We'll have 10 Things I Think. We'll have the Mailbag Podcast, the Rocky Top Roundtable, all of our weekly coverage to get you ready for Tennessee and Kentucky in Neyland Stadium at noon on Saturday. Hey, let me tell you about our friends at Blue Water Climate Control. Remember, if you're in the need for any kind of HVAC repair of any kind, give them a call at 865-299-2290. You can book an appointment online at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com. They'll send a technician out to give you exactly what you need. They won't give you a sales pitch. They'll tell you exactly what you need. If it's a simple repair, if it's a major repair, they have financing for you. They're going to take care of you. So give them a call today at 865-299-2290. That's Blue Water Climate Control. For Rob Lewis and Austin Price, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody.